Everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of Planet of Evil, the second story of the 13th season of classic Doctor Who, starring Tom Baker as the fourth Doctor. Planet of Evil is the 81st story overall, it's 4 parts long, and is written by Louis Marks. So the plot for Planet of Evil is as follows. The Doctor and Sarah answer intergalactic distress call that takes them to a far-flung planet at the edge of the known universe, Zeta Minor. Arriving at the same time as the rescue team, they search for survivors of an earlier expedition. But will anyone be allowed to leave the planet alive? So that's the plot for Planet of Evil. So Planet of Evil is a fairly good story, but does have its faults that pretty much hinders its overall quality. The production of the story was actually great. The set design of the Zeta Minor jungle was stunning. I mean, it looked visually appealing, and I think the BBC loved it to the point where they actually included the pictures of the Planet of Evil set in an internal manual for people making TV shows and stuff. So I give a big well done to Roger Murray Leach, who pretty much made the set designs for this story. The other sets like the spaceship they were all on and were around for most of the story was generic. I think they even reused some other parts from other spaceships from previous stories, but yeah, and we also get a new TARDIS interior, a new TARDIS console room, and we haven't actually seen the TARDIS console room since Death to the Daleks, and I really like this one. I wish they kept it around for a bit longer, but it's a good thing to see it again in Pyramids of Mars. Visual effects of the story looked very trippy and was very well done for the 1970s, especially the antimatter creature effects and how it was like distorted to like how it distorts to like triple effect. I'm not sure the wording here, but how it like triples in like a effect and how Sorensen was able to clone himself with the antimatter creature. The script was good. I mean, nice dialogue, and I think the direction by David Maloney was very good as well. The plot of the story was actually good. I mean, Planet of Evil is actually based on an old sci-fi movie called Forbidden Planet, which is actually based on Shakespeare's The Tempest, and I'm not really entirely familiar with both of these works, which is actually quite funny because I did study a bit of Shakespeare in school. So I can't really say that this story pretty much did Forbidden Planet justice, but they also they used the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde elements for Sorensen and how he was the how he was the anti man, and but he didn't really know at the same time. So in the Dr. Jekyll Mr. Hyde aspect, I can say that this story pretty much did that aspect of it justice. The pacing of it was iffy to say the least. I mean, part one had a very slow start. Which I actually forgive. Then parts two and three had decent pacing. But I think the pacing for part four pretty much just died down, and I pretty much lost interest in that element. And so this story also had had decent moments, not as iconic as the previous story, Terror of the Zygon, and other Tom Baker stories, but it was still decent. I liked the bit when the Doctor fell into the antimatter pool at the end of part two, and in part three, the Doctor pretty much just spends his time just spinning around in the antimatter pool, and it actually reminded me of Inferno when the third Doctor was trying to he and the TARDIS console ended up in that void that led to the parallel universe, and the Doctor was just spinning on all these special effects, and the Doctor's face was just like his face was like stretching around and all that. That was another good scene. I think that's what actually reminded me of in this story. And I also like the part one cliffhanger when the Doctor and Sarah were being menaced by one of the antimatter monsters, and that was a very chilling and a very tense cliffhanger. To the acting, which I think was pretty good. Tom Baker, I think he did a decent job, and I think this is probably the first story he doesn't actually do a great deal of memorable moments aside from the part when he was in the antimatter pool, which I actually pretty liked. I also liked how the Doctor was trying to follow Sorensen after Salama tried to kill him and Sarah Jane by ejecting them from the ship. I also like how the Doctor was quoting Shakespeare in part two and how he was talking to Sarah about it. I pretty much say the same for Elizabeth Sladen. She was good, but she doesn't really do that great a deal of memorable moments, but she does have parts where she actually shines out in the story. But I think she's actually doing a good job carrying the role of a sole companion again, now that Harry is no longer a companion as he left in the Terror of the Zygons. I did like how she was pretty much protesting her and the Doctor's innocence when the Salama was trying to eject them from the ship. And you also like with part when Sarah pretty much snuck out of the ship to try and save the Doctor when he resurfaced from the antimatter pool. That was pretty selfless of Sarah Jane, and I think that's what made her a great character, and I pretty much mentioned that before several times. And I must admit, it's really nice seeing the Fourth Doctor and Sarah alone together, because I think their chemistry together pretty much contributed to the strengths that this story had, and as well as making the early Tom Baker era very enjoyable and very memorable as well. The cast were minimal. Most of them were the Morestrian military spacemen, and most of them pretty much died before the end of the story. The only two characters that stood out were Wyszynski and Professor Sorensen. Wyszynski was a member of the crew that he and the crewmates were on. He didn't really trust the Doctor in the beginning, but he later began to trust him. He even tried to prevent Salama from killing them in part 3, and I think Wyszynski was a very nice character. He was quite cool. I think he's probably the only likable side character there as well. And it was really nice how he pretty much helped the Doctor defeat the antimatter creatures and help and stop Salama from pretty much killing the Doctor and Sarah. Sorensen was a professor that discovered the antimatter materials when he was pretty much going to be saved by the Morestrian men, and he was the cause of all the antimatter creatures spawning all over Zeta Minor and the Morestrian strip. He was a good character. I mean, they were both very good characters, and I think those two are the only few surviving major side characters in this story. Sorensen was actually supposed to have died in the end when he fell into the antimatter pool, but Philip Hinchcliffe thought it would be too dark for the younger viewers, which I actually think is ironic because his era is quite dark. So on to the villains. We had the antimatter creatures. They were formed by pure antimatter and pretty much attacked any visitors to Zeta Minor. It only attacked at night and can actually kill its victims by draining at their life force. And obviously they infected Sorensen, and he was the cause of being the anti-man. They were scary creatures, but the only thing I noticed is that there was never a clear motive on why he had decided to attack any of the victims. And we also had Salama. He was the man in charge of the Morestrian spaceship, and he tended to quickly accuse the Doctor and Sarah for being the cause of the anti-man attacking his men and stuff like that. And he was a good villain / foe to the Doctor and Sarah, but it got really annoying and it got really boring and how he was just so antagonistic towards them. And at one point I thought he actually trusted them, but no, he decided to just randomly accuse the Doctor and Sarah, and which led to the part 3 cliffhanger, which I thought that part of the plot was a bit redundant because it was just a bit stupid because there was one part when another of the Morestrian men died, and he decided to accuse the Doctor and Sarah even though they were in the room with him. God, I'm just sorry. He could have been a better character, but come on, there was no need for that. So on to the other faults in the story. So let me add on to the pacing issue. I mean, it was the pacing was uneven, but I think it would have been better if it was a 6-parter, because I do think that some parts of the plot that were a bit rushed, so to speak, and it would have been a good opportunity to try and build the world of Zeta Minor, because those sets were just stunning, man. And obviously Salama, I think he carried on the villainous 4 role for a bit too long, and I think it didn't really make sense for him to randomly decide to kill the Doctor and Sarah Jane, even though one of his men died, even though in the same room, the Doctor and Sarah were in the same room as him. But even if Salama actually killed the Doctor and Sarah by ejecting him into the ship, more people would have died, and he still would have thought it was the Doctor and Sarah that were behind it. I mean, that's just the sort of the man who he was. I mean, I guess he was paranoid, but there's a difference between paranoia and a lack of common sense, which I think Salama actually lacked, to be honest. So I didn't think he was a good villain, but there were some bits and pieces where he did that he just really annoyed the hell out of me. So to conclude, Planet of Evil is a good story, and it's tad underrated as well, even though I didn't really care much for it because I only watched the story for the first time in October. But I do feel like there was more attention that was put into the production than the actual story itself, so I gave the story an 8 out of 10. My next review will be Pyramids of Mars, one of my dear favourites from the Tom Baker era. So thanks for watching this review. Please let me know what you thought of Planet of Evil and this review itself, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and enjoy my Discord server if you want to. Links in the description. Until then, see you later.